Hi kids, Sandy here. Welcome Sparks and Mount Riv, and welcome to Church Online. Today we're going to be learning about Moses, and I'm going to be reading to you from the Jesus Storybook Bible. Come and join me. Joseph and his brothers grew old and died, but their children's children stayed on in Egypt, where they became a very large family. Later on, a new king began to rule. But this Pharaoh didn't remember Joseph, and he didn't like God's people. He made them into his slaves and beat them and made them work harder and harder. God's people cried out to God to rescue them, and God heard them. He remembered his promise to Abraham. He would look after his people. He would find a way to set them free. One day, Moses was looking after sheep when something caught his eye. A bush was behaving very oddly. It was flickering with flames, but its leaves weren't burning up. He took a closer look.
"Moses!"
boomed a big voice. Moses leapt back. The bush was talking to him.
"I have heard my people's cries. I have seen their tears, so I've come down to rescue them. Go to Pharaoh, tell him to let my people go free."
Moses was afraid, but God said,
"I will be with you."
So Moses went to Pharaoh.
"Pharaoh,"
Moses began.
God says, "God? Never heard of him."
Moses kept going.
God says, "Let his people go free." Why should I? Don't want to. Won't.
So he didn't. So God gave Pharaoh 10 warnings called plagues. First, God turned the river Nile into blood. No one could drink the water, but still Pharaoh would not let them go. So God made frogs come hopping and leaping and jumping. In your bed frogs, in your hair frogs, in your soup frogs, all over everywhere frogs.
Make them go away! Oh, then your people can go.
So God took the frogs away. But Pharaoh changed his mind.
You can't go.
Then God sent zillions of gnats. But still, Pharaoh said,
No!
So then God sent swarms of flies. Flies buzzing in your eyes, flies. After that, sickness and horrible boils and huge hailstones and a storm of locusts, then darkness when it should have been day. But each time Pharaoh said,
Make it stop! And then I'll let them go.
And each time when God made it stop, Pharaoh changed his mind and said,
Actually, no, you can't go.
Finally, Moses warned Pharaoh.
Obey God, or he will have to send the worst thing of all.
So God said,
"The oldest boy in each family of Egypt must die, but my people will be safe."
That night, it was just as God had said. Pharaoh's oldest son had died. At last, Pharaoh did what God said.
Get out! Just go!
And so that very night, Moses and God's people fled out of Egypt and out of slavery. They were free at last. Moses and God's people escaped out of Egypt and into the wilderness. They didn't know the way, but God knew the way, and he would show them.
"I will bring you a new home, a special land.
God promised them.
I will look after you. I am with you."
God sent a big cloud for them to follow, a pillar of smoke stretching up to the sky. It moved in front of them as they walked and shaded them from the blazing heat of the day. And when it was time to rest, it stopped. All through the cold desert nights, it kept them warm, glowing like a fire. God led his people through the desert to the edge of a great sea, and they were just wondering how to cross it when suddenly they heard a terrible thundering and pounding. It sounded almost like horses' hooves. They shaded their eyes to look back, and it was Pharaoh and his army were coming to get them. Pharaoh had changed his mind again. What were God's people going to do? In front of them was a big sea. It was so big there was no way around it. There was no way through it. It was too deep. So they did the only thing there was left to do.
We're gonna die!
Don't be afraid.
But there's nothing we can do!
God knows you can't do anything. God will do it for you. Trust him and watch.
But there's no way out!
God will make a way.
Another minute and it would have been over. But then the strangest thing happened. There, right through the middle of the sea, a pathway opened up and God's people walked on dry land. When the Egyptians tried to follow, the walls of water crashed down. When there had been no way out, God had made a way.